Hello Computer Graphics 2, Mr. Arcusa here, and I wanted to cover the steps that I gave you in class on Monday on how to convert your Illustrator mockup or your Photoshop mockup to Flash so that you can start creating your web page. Here I have my 1024 by 768 Illustrator mockup window open. I don't have the background locked, so I can copy and paste it into the Flash window. When creating your Flash document, be sure to make it 1024 by 768 as well. If you're using a solid colored background like I am, I'm just going to make it the same color that my background was in Illustrator. So as you can see here, this is as if I just started. I'm doing a file new, and I'm making sure it's ActionScript 2.0, and again my width is going to be 1024 and my height is going to be 768. So then just hit OK, and then you'll see your new document. Modify document. That's all right. Background color is that, and this. Okay, maybe it doesn't do that. We'll just pick one that's close. How's that sound? Okay, so there it is, and we hit OK. Alright, so your next move. Before you start pasting, let's set up some layers in Flash first. First move is I'm going to double click on layer 1, and I'm going to change it to background. This will help you kind of keep track of what's going on. Then make a new layer called Buttons. Next, make one for text. Then sound, if you plan on incorporating sound in any of this, obviously. And finally, actions. Because as I was saying in class, if you're going to need to put a stop action in it anywhere, or later on down the line when we learn about going back and forth and starting and stopping and going back to different frames because different actions happen in them and so on and so forth, you'll want to keep your actions palette, or excuse me, an actions layer separate. It'll make things less confusing. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Illustrator, and I'm going to select all my background elements. There's no need for me to select my background rectangle because I already made it lilac in Flash. If you have a full screen pic, however, like if you had a big giant JPEG back there in Photoshop, or even if you're using Illustrator, if it's a big picture that is 1024 by 768, you'll need to select that. Okay, I don't have to do that because I just used a pink background or lilac background, and the only picture in the back for me is the one I made transparent before. So I'm going to go select all of these things, and I'm going to include that yellow stripe because that doesn't move, and I'm also not going to include the word home. That was something that I added before just to identify which page was which, and I don't need that part. So I also don't need my rectangle. So again, I'll select it a different way this time. I need fluffystuff.com. I need the .com that was grouped. I need that purple puffy cloud thing. I need the picture that I have back there, and I need the yellow rectangle or the line. I'm going to just Command C and copy it. I'm going to come back to Flash, and I'm going to click on the first frame of the background layer to make sure that's where it goes. Rather than just paste, I'm going to do Command Shift V, okay, or if you want to see it here in the edit menu, edit, paste in place. Okay, and I'm going to accept the defaults. Make sure yours is still set like it was the last time we used Flash, and hit OK. So there you can see it right there. Everything came in the exact spot. I don't have to move anything around. And don't forget that when you paste things in the Flash that way, it for some reason changes the name of the layers. I haven't figured that out yet, but I'm going to name that background again. And keep in mind, anytime you paste something into a frame, it's going to change the name of it, so you might want to do that. So this is all set for me. I'm done with my background. I'm not going to make anything else happen. So just like anything else in Photoshop or Illustrator, if you have a situation where you know you don't want to mess anything up or you don't want any changes to happen, I'm going to lock it. Okay, so my next move is going to be I'm going to go ahead and lock these in Illustrator so I can't click on them. Command 2. Okay, and now I'm going to go select all of my buttons, but not that yellow stripe. Oops, didn't lock that one. Command C to copy it. I'm going to come back to Flash, highlight the first frame of the buttons layer, and Command Shift V or edit paste in place and hit OK. Name that buttons again, and I'm good. Okay, so we're pretty much set up with the background and the buttons. You'll add content later, but that's kind of up to you. Just use Flash's type tool and click and drag a text box just like you would in Illustrator. If you have pictures, you'll do file import and you'll choose the pictures you're going to put in there. And that's all okay. So now I'm going to zoom in a little bit here because I need to get up close on my buttons, and I'm going to start the steps involved on animating the buttons so that we get the rollover states and the down states that we created in class the other day, or that I created in class the other day. So we're going to start with, you guessed it, home. You're going to make sure you select all the pieces of whatever button it is. In my case, let's zoom in a little bit more here. In my case, the only thing I have is that puffy pink cloud and the word home. So I'm going to make sure they're both selected. And when everything's cool and I got all the pieces, I'm going to hold Control and click, or right click on your mouse, and convert to symbol. Now I want to make sure that I name this thing home, okay, because it just makes sense to. You're going to choose home. The type is going to obviously be a button. Do not choose movie clip, do not choose graphic, or it's going to screw everything up for you. So you want button and then hit OK. Okay, so there's two ways for you to know that you were successful in converting your object to a button. The first way you can check, and we didn't talk about this in class, is to go to the Control menu and then click on Enable Simple Buttons, or Command Option B. Okay, if I do that, it'll show me if it's a simple button. Okay, it'll give me it'll change from being a cursor to being the typical web link finger cursor to let you know that you're on top of a link, and you'll know that you're okay. Make sure to turn this off though for the next step. That's just a check real quick to see if it worked. The other way you'll be able to see if it actually is a button is to do what we did in class Monday and double click on it, and then if it is in fact a button, you'll see the up, over, down, and hit states showing up in the button editing mode. Okay. Animating these buttons is simple. The up state represents what the button looks like untouched, which is what we already have. The over state, just as the name implies, is what happens when the cursor hovers over the button. The down state is how it looks when pressed with the cursor, and hit is an invisible state that defines a button's surface area. I'll explain that more later. The up state is already done. Okay, so this is our up state, and it looks just like that. For the over state, I've chosen to make a blank keyframe because I drew an over state already in Illustrator. This can be anything you want. If you got a picture of a basketball and you put it in there, that would become what happened. That would be what happens to the button when you hover over it. Okay, but I'm gonna just go first and highlight the over frame, and I'm gonna right click, and I'm going to do insert blank keyframe this time, and that gives me absolutely nothing because I haven't put anything in there yet. It's also very important when you do this to enable onion skin so that you can see the ghost of what it was in the frame before, just like in the regular editing timeline in Flash. So I'm going to go back to Illustrator. I'm going to select my upstate, or excuse me, my overstate, and copy it. I'm going to come back here, make sure that the overstate frame is selected, and I'm going to do Command Shift V again, and I'm going to paste that in there. And in this one, it's not really important for you to go change the name to something. This is just for the button. So that's what's going to happen when it's in overstate. So upstate will look like that, the original. The overstate will be a little lighter with a different color text. Okay, and I'm going to go check and make sure that everything's working. So if you click your arrow on the upper left corner to get out of that state and hit Command Return or Command Enter, it'll open up a preview of what your site looks like, and when you hold the cursor over it, it should change color. Okay, because again, that's the upstate when it's away, and this is what it looks like when it's over. I'm going to go ahead and close that window, and I'm going to resume. So I'm going to go back into button editing mode because I still have more work to do. Double click the button. This time I'm going to go with the down state, and this time I'm going to right click and I'm going to do insert keyframe. Now this isn't the order that you all have to do it in. This is just the order that I chose to use. The first one, I did blank keyframe for the overstate because I made some other art before that was going to go in its place. Okay, but in this case, I'm going to use the same one that was there. I'm just going to use my arrow keys to bump it down. It's going to go down that far. Like I explained in class the other day, if you had a symbol that was in there, you'd want to Command B to break it apart so you'd be able to change the color. I'm going to Command B this one because it's a grouped object and I want to have full ability to edit. So I'm going to select this, and I think I'm going to change the color of it to, let's go with the burgundy. Okay, and then I'm going to select the letters, and these aren't true text here, but I'm just holding Shift to get the original ones because that's easy. And I'm going to select the fill color, and I'm going to make this gold because burgundy and gold is the best. Everybody knows that. All right, finally, the last thing that you'll want to do is in the hit state. This is the one we were talking about earlier that is invisible. It doesn't show up in Flash. It's just a like a real estate type thing where it shows the cursor what areas are going to activate your buttons functions. Okay, so I'm gonna right click, and if you wanted to do insert keyframe, you could, and you could have put the same thing there and then do what we're gonna do next, but I'm just gonna do a blank keyframe. I'm gonna get the rectangle tool, and I'm just gonna draw a rectangle around the whole area where buttons appear. Okay, that's just going to, again, it's going to be an indicator. This is telling Flash that when you publish this and it's viewed through a browser or other HTML viewer, that when you hold out here, nothing happens, but as soon as you touch the rectangle, that's when the button will activate. I'm going to purposely make this way too big just to kind of illustrate my point and show you what's going on. Okay, so you see I drew this way too big. I'm going to get out of button editing mode. I'm going to hit Command Return. Okay, and now you'll see, watch. When I get too close to where that rectangle was, look, even though I'm not on the button, it's registering to where I put that big gigantic rectangle that was too big. Okay, yes, it still works when you're on the button, but you don't want it to work all the way out here because if you have content out there, it's going to make stuff go crazy and pop up unexpectedly. Okay, so I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to go back to editing the button, and I'm going to go to the hit state, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to size this down and make sure that it's only the size of the button area. Okay, so about that big. That's how much surface area I want to be defined. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's about all you have to do. You'll just have to repeat the process over and over for each one of the buttons. Do make sure you get out of button editing mode before you start making changes though, or it could get pretty frustrating. Okay, so if you're confused and you're not real sure how to do it, just scrub back in this video and go back and watch it again. The last thing that I'm going to talk about with you today is how to tell your buttons what to do, okay? Because this first part of it has been, you know, just how to animate the buttons and make the rollovers happen, okay? But this one, the thing we're going to talk about now is, you know, eventually when you finish the page, you're going to need the buttons to be able to link to other pages so that you'll be able to go back and forth and navigate, or so the user will be able to navigate. So this is, I don't want to say simple, but you have to pay attention to detail and you have to be precise with it. Okay, so if you need more details on how to create the action to make the buttons work, go refer to the Edmodo assignment posted before this one, because it has it spelled out for you. Okay, but this is how it's going to work. Okay, so this is my button, my home button I made earlier that works. I'm going to right click on it again and I'm going to choose Actions. Let's try this just like it appears in the instructions for linking to a website. Okay, so two actions are going to be needed. First, I'm going to click the little book button on the left that says Global Functions. That's this one here. Then Movie Clip Control. I'm going to double click the On command. Okay, and that's going to put that in there, and you'll see that it adds the parentheses and brackets that we need, and it's flashing and waiting for something for me to put into the parentheses. Okay, so next I'm going to double click the arrow that says Release to add that function. And I'm going to cursor over into the inside of the bracket. So I'm going to move my cursor to right here, so it's inside the bracket. And I'm going to close the movie clip control book. And I'm going to add the second function with the cursor flashing and waiting inside of the bracket. I'm going to click on the Browser Network book and double click the Get URL command and type in open quotation mark next. Okay, and inside of this I'm going to name this home.html. Close quote, and that should do it for us. That's the entire command. If you were going to have a button in your web page somewhere that links to a website, then inside the quotation marks you would do http://www.redskins.com, close quote. Okay, but that's not what I'm doing here. Okay, I'm just going to home.html. Now, for those of you who kind of understand linking, you may be wondering why I didn't put an HTTP in there or some other kind of extension, and that's because when you turn this assignment into me, all of these pages will be in one folder, and if it's all in the same folder, it just looks for a file in that folder of that name. So nothing to worry about there. So on and then release and get URL and home.html. I would suggest following and reading the instructions on the linking buttons and flash assignment very carefully, just like I just did, okay, before you move on. So I'm going to copy all of this, okay, copy, because I'm going to use it all again later. Okay, so that's good. And unfortunately right now I have no real way to test the buttons because you have to finish all the pages first for that to happen. But before you can finish all the pages, you have to make sure that you make all the buttons programmed correctly, so that every time you make a new page you don't have to do this process over and over again. Okay, so this one, this Hall of Fame button, I'm going to create a new button with this HOF and OK, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to go animate this one. I'm just going to show you how to assign the action to it. You know, while you're in here, if you just select a different button, it'll be okay. So let's put this where it was. I did something wrong there, I think. Okay, I'm just going to select this, and I'm going to copy. Then I'm going to select the other button, click here, and paste. There we go. And just change that to HOF. Okay, and then the next one, when it becomes a button, it'll be called same thing, but handmade.html. And then the one after that will be moviefluff.html, and you'll go all the way down the line until they're all done. Okay, so you'll repeat that process for all of the buttons. So after you're done with with making the buttons and animating them, the next step will be adding content to the home page, like your description of what the page is all about, or any pictures you're going to put on it, or what have you. You'll save it, and then you'll make changes to a new page and save as, and call the next one HOF. You have to make sure that all your Flash documents are named what the buttons are named, or the HTML naming thing for the buttons won't work. Okay, and I'll explain that part more in class. And thanks a whole bunch for paying attention. And that's it, and good luck.